Continue. I'm sure the others will arrive in due course. Okay, if you look at the marketing process, we start off by analyzing marketing opportunities, and that can be done by various means, various ways of market research, which you will do quite a bit of when you do statistics. We're looking at market research and the processing of information. And obviously first you have to consider your macro environment. Start positioning yourself from the outside in and say, right, we are in the, what is happening around us in terms of demographics, economics, social cultural structure and the political legal structure. Then if you look at the micro environment, look at marketing intermediaries, the public competitors and suppliers. Now if you look at marketing intermediaries, what is marketing basically?
Advertising.
Yes, it's actually communicating to the outside world, here I am, this is me. So Henry Truman, that's Truman, his first name was from the American president. He once said there is no thing such as bad publicity. There is only publicity. He said bad publicity if there is no publicity, because then there's no interest in you. So I gave you the example of what Rolls-Royce did when the guy arrived. There they actually used a bit of bad publicity. The guys at Rolls-Royce don't have manners, but they used it to say, but can you argue with it? Does it? Well, why are they there? Are they a company that teaches manners, or do they build the best car in the world? So you live up to that image. There's an interesting story about marketing. There's who of you drinks whiskey? Do you know the McCullum? Now the McCullum is quite a profitable distillery, and they had a rather rare 50-year-old whiskey available. And in South Africa there was a person, and the wine merchant B.J. Langwarden actually told me about this. He was the merchant, and this guy was the head of a pension fund, and he collected whiskey. And now the McCullum at one stage had an advertising campaign. They advertised McCullum whiskey, and they wrote at the bottom, the Rolls-Royce of whiskies. And it was left at that, and then when the annual report was published and Rolls-Royce saw what their profit margin is, they said, no, you're not going to use our name just like that. And they demanded an apology. And yeah, B.J. Langwarden said then McCullum did what only McCullum could do. They went and hired a photographer, and they had an absolutely outstanding picture taken of a Rolls-Royce. And they took a full-page ad in the London Times, and they published this picture, and below it they wrote, Rolls-Royce, the McCullum of motor cars. And Rolls-Royce accepted. In any case, yeah, so that, and then now this McCullum 50-year-old bottle, and it was the pension fund owner that collected the scotch said yes, he's looking for a 50-year-old McCullum, he'll be interested, and 67,000 rand, and this guy said yes, we'll take it. And VJ contacted McCullum and said we'll take it, and they said no, you don't understand. A bottle 50-year-old McCullum you don't just take. It has to be flown in, and it has to be carried down the steps of the aircraft by the captain. At the bottom of the stairs on the runway must be a convertible Rolls Royce. The reigning beauty queen of the country must be in that Rolls Royce, and she must receive the bottle from the captain. It must have TV coverage. Then it must be displayed in a wine merchant store, what we call a bottle store, for 3 months. And then it can disappear. And then, well, the deal didn't go through because the guy that was in charge of the pension fund said, the press will somehow track where did that bottle go, and he says he doesn't think it'll look good if the big chief of a pension fund buys whiskey at 67,000 rand a bottle. Not very clever. So that's actually the reason.
Sure.
Because of the publicity, it fell flat. But that is all marketing. Some people will buy that. For sure they will. And
is it a Scottish brand?
yes, yeah, Scottish. You get the younger ones aren't so expensive, a few hundred rand a bottle, and then I think the most expensive bottle of Scotch is now $15 million.
Do they still have the Rolls Royce story?
No, I don't know if that is continued. No, well, Rolls-Royce wanted an apology. So the apology was that I think they stopped it there, yes.
Someone that owns that bottle must be like, I've got millions in my hand.
Well, you know, the bottle is made, it's not even Baccarat crystal, it's silver, it's got pure gold on it, and it's some quite fancy. I think there are something like 12 available in the world. But in any case, that's somebody once sent me an email on the world's most valuable whiskies.
A 16 million bottle is what?
I can't remember the name. It is a Scotch. There were a few cognacs as well, but the Scotch whiskies, that was whiskey, Scotch whiskey. There's some French whiskies, and I think the most expensive one I've seen in bottle stores around that you see now and then is, thank you. Everybody sigh.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's King James, the Johnny Walker whiskey. Goes for about $6,000 a bottle. Can you imagine if that falls off the shelf? In any case. Or if you've got somebody looking after your house and they say I had a Scotch and it's that
Yeah,
one.
what?
It's getting locked up.
Which Scotch did you open?
I don't know, I actually probably worried there. If I signed 16, I left it over.
Yeah.
That's high risk. Very high risk.
Then they'll put tea in there to say they never touched it. Yeah, I drank great whiskey.
Yeah, that can be quite a surprise. Okay, so
Black tea, yeah.
so actually, if we look at the marketing opportunity, that apology that was demanded by Rolls-Royce, McCullum took and actually made it a very good marketing opportunity. They took a bit of a risk, hoping Rolls-Royce would accept, but Rolls-Royce was big enough to accept. I think the level of maturity of South African business might not have accepted it. But then, it was like the time, I don't know what Leon Schuster movie came out, when Nas Botha sued Leon Schuster. Because he portrayed him with his rabbit's teeth. But that was all orchestrated. I mean, if Nas Botha is in the movie, what does a lawsuit cost you if you agree? You file the papers, there it is, on the roll. And the next step is you scrap it. But it's on the roll, it's news. Nas Botha is upset.
I think Nando's gets caught to that quite often.
Oh yes, but I mean, look at that Julius Malema puppet, doll, blow up doll, whatever. I mean, the withdrawal of it, they made just enough of a scene to really keep it in the news. And then the auction of the doll, I mean, that was, I thought, brilliant. Auction it off now. And then the guy that bought it said he's going to use it for a campaign and then he's going to donate it to Helen Ziller. More publicity. Okay, then if you look at researching and selecting target markets, identifying market segments, selecting target market. If you, for instance, want to, somebody once said, if you want to advertise, talk to a reasonably high-profile market, you must advertise in Noseweek. Because a lot of people are scared they appear there. And these are often people with means. So if you, they say they apparently have very good political readership as well. I can imagine it. So it can, the reason why you buy it, why a lot of people buy it, may be totally different from the reason of other people. And that's what one has to find out. Where do you address your right market? When do you, and that's why it's very good to monitor your communication process. Where do I get the best reaction? And I think that is all round in management. Even if you address your personnel, if you talk to them, make sure it's understood. And if you see there's a certain way of communicating, it works, it attracts attention, then use it. I think Nando's was very brilliant to take a humoristic approach, because nobody minds a little bit of humor. And I once heard an interview with whatever the guy's name is, that fabricates all the ads. There was some considerable event, and they asked, it was a radio interview, and they said, I'm sure Nando's going to make an ad. The guy said, no, I never do take something that's leading news. We always take something that is people know about, but that we can give a nice twist, because that keeps it unexpected. And so that's quite an interesting touch. You don't know what they will take. It will be something that's current. So they actually prove that they have the ability also to make something that is in the undercurrent quite current, because they get so much more attention. Then designing the marketing strategies, positioning, new product development, and the product life cycle. In the new Consumer Protection Act, they prohibit price variances. I cannot sell one thing for a certain price in one area and for another price in another area. So in other words, I cannot sell it for 1,000 Rand in Sandton and the same product for 500 Rand in rural areas.
It happens with Pick and Pay.
It does.
Yeah, because I stay in Island North. I have, I can go to Norwood, Pick and Pay, shopping there, and or I can use the Orange Group one, the new one that they just recently built. But you sometimes find that the price of the item in Norwood the same item is a little bit different from the one that is.
And I personally don't see a problem with it. Where I do see a problem, I think, is, and you see, that is the problem with, we have a bit of a problem with new laws that are promulgated in South Africa, is they are left to be shaped by courts. Now, for business, that is quite an essential consideration in business management, because you're running a risk of interpretation. So how, this is a Consumer Protection Act, which protects the consumer against what? Business, not so? So now it can be interpreted that it means, to me it makes total business sense that I relate my product markup to my rent. That variance in percentage must be reflected in my product because I have to collect so much more, but it is also because it is in an area where people have much better means. Which will then obviously go to say that it will be cheaper in a rural area for them. But what they tried to do is they tried to block what happened in financing this mail order business. That's actually what sparked it. That they sell something for a fortune and it's delivered, not always what it should be, and then they charge more for that than the shelf price is. That's what they wanted to address. So now we have to wait till there's some ruling by the tribunal or whatever, and then they have to say, no, but this is the interpretation. Right now the law is shaping itself. But to write a law for itself to shape is quite dangerous. I can understand that in terms of the Constitution, because times change. Otherwise, if times didn't change and we had a then I suppose the American Constitution would have still addressed witchcraft. So, to have the business related to the area makes sense, but in business we have to be careful about how that is interpreted and enforced eventually. So, we have positioning, new product development. I'm sure you all heard of the S-curve, any new product. The sigmoid curve looks a bit different. There's also an S, but it lies on its nose. We'll see that tomorrow. But the product S-curve looks something like that. And you have your introduction of the product, and then it gets accepted. You get your initiation phase, which is the first owners. I must have that now. And then you go into the market, and then at one stage, the market starts petering out. The demand for the product is satisfied, and that may be for various reasons. And some products are planned extensively. For instance, ZF gearboxes, which I think are in most of your cars. They plan the discontinuation of a product is a 5-year project. So they have a 5-year rollout project to discontinue a product. That is also to, at the same time, introduce the replacement into the market. And you cannot have a gearbox now and suddenly there's nothing available. So it's all based on that this vehicle will move out of the market, and what spares do we need, and where do we eventually completely withdraw it from the marketplace. And then that's the product life cycle. So when we get there, why would that be important to consider or project? Absolutely, for forecast. Because if we are producing for this type of demand and we get here, we're going to have certain serious overstocks. And that costs money. So you have to, that's why you so often find shortages in the market. They predicted the S-curve maybe, and suddenly the demand kept on the rise longer than was predicted. Because the moment the demand is reducing, you want to get out of your stock as quickly as possible so that you can remain competitive in the marketplace. And yes, as I said, that leads to short stock shortages, and then suddenly if the market dips and there is a lot of surplus stock, then you get special. So there should be very soon there should be a new C-Class Mercedes. Why is that? Why do I say that?
Because they introduced the A and B.
No, they are offering special deals on C-Classes now. So they want to move that stock. That means the production line is already being changed for the new model to be produced. And it is about time. If you look at about 5 years per model. So there are a lot of tendencies in the market that one can follow to. At one stage I don't know if any of you will remember 1990. Would you have known anything about interest rates? 1990 there was quite a scene in South Africa about banks charging too much interest on overdrafts. Mm-hmm. And home loans. That's what I started. The whole overcharge of interest. We got about 100 million out of ABSA. And so because you are in the interest rate industry and people ask you what do you think interest rates are going to do? And it's actually quite easy. You just look what the banks offer. The banks pay a fortune for all the economists. If you get lower interest rates over a longer period, what do they expect? A reduction. If the longer period is higher, they expect an increase. So you're as good as the whole panel of the bank's economists. They do all the working out and you do the predicting. They think, but this guy knows his interest business. It's there for everyone to see. But yeah, that was now let's talk about marketing something like that. How easy is it to sell if I pick up the phone and I phone the Farmers Association? I tell them, do you want me to come tell you how the banks steal money from you?
Please.
Yes, please come. Guaranteed when I leave there, I leave with piles and piles of bank statements. And my speech always started, we are here today to talk about better and worse banks. The better banks are Nedbank and Standard Bank. It was at the time. Times changed. And the worst banks at the time was Trust Bank, Volkskas and First National Bank. They said they were the tape recorders. But they never took me to court. And but that's something quite easy to sell. The home interest rates were Sambo Bank. That was quite recent because it was interesting the day Sambo was liquidated. That was the day we were sitting in court case against Sambo Bank about the way they charge interest. And as we walked into court, it was announced that Sambo Bank is liquidated. So the Chief Justice had to decide, what do we do with the case? It's the first time in the world's history that a bank is liquidated on the date that the court case begins again. What do you do with such a case? So Judge Stafford said, well, I think he thinks it should be heard. And at the time, and then First National Bank took it over, and they said they will have to refund about 115 million in wrong calculations on Sambo loans. I don't know if you remember that. And then that should have been about 1.5 billion. Because what did they do? They calculated interest in advance instead of arrears. What impact does it make? If we took a projected loan, that we did back in early 90s already, when you could still buy a house for 100,000. We took 100,000 rand over 20 years. The interest rate that is charged does not matter. It's the method of calculation. So we took one interest rate with the calculation ahead, charging interest ahead of time and in arrears. Arrears is what is required by law. You cannot pay interest for time that you have not used the money. So in advance, they actually charge you for time that you haven't had the money. And it works out that after 20 years, the calculation was absolutely zero on interest in arrears and interest in advance. How much do you think you own a 100,000 rand house after 20 years? If you pay, no, if you have paid all your payments in time,
Probably 3 times the amount.
you still owe 120,000 on a 100,000 house. So you've paid off. If the calculation was different, your balance would have been zero. And that was about 240,000 that you then had repaid. And you would still owe more than 3 times. Well, in total, you would pay more than 3 times. But why don't people pick it up? Because house values increase. And how many people stay in their house for 20 years? So they sell the house, it's a higher value, the difference is settled, it all goes through banks and lawyers, and there goes the next step. Next house, Sambo again. The banks always calculated it the right way, but not the building societies, not one of them. Again, then, so we have a product life cycle, but what I actually wanted to get to, when we started the interest rate calculations, I had a few people with me that we did it. And I said to the people, you know, if we want to cover market, we'll have to cover this market within 3 years. Because within 3 years, I am sure the banks would do something to have a serious argument against us. For the first year and a half, they've refused to look at a recalculation. All we then did, we submitted, or we did. We matched the debt against the claim. So what our clients did, they took their overdraft up to the claimable amount, submitted the calculation, and said, right, regard this account was closed. Then they already had an account at another bank. And that started getting a bit difficult for the banks. So they started listening. I actually said to them in a meeting, I think it's quite ironic, they're stealing money from the public, now they want to negotiate how much they must pay back. If I have a home loan, I can't negotiate with them after 5 years and say I want to pay you back less. So, but I've always kept an account at ABSA just to remind them that I'm still alive.
Who do you bank with, Carl?
I was First National, Standard, and my account at ABSA. And I actually, this is what I told you about the small claims court. I just have a savings account with ABSA. It just has a bit of money in, but I want them to know that I live. And then suddenly they started charging fees to the account. But it was supposed to be no charge account. So I waited and I waited and I waited till these fees, at least it must be worth the exercise. So they had a few rands of fees of mine. And because the small claims court at the time had a maximum of 7,000 rand. So I said, right now I've just discovered these fees that you charge. I want so many years statements, and I added up all these little charges. Had a boring moment. And then I said to them, this is what you owe me. Obviously they ignored me. I went to small claims court and they said, right, let me summons them. And the next thing, I got a phone call from ABSA, so we've credited your account. So, and then, as I said, the nice thing with small claims court is they can't bombard you with legal processes. There's one finding. What the commissioner in the small claims court finds stands. There's no room for appeal. So there's no appeal, nothing, and if it goes through, which is quite a possibility, then ABSA, the bank, has a judgment against its name. That looks bad. So the bank is not credit worthy. Painful. Okay, so planning marketing programs. You have the marketing mix: product, price, promotion, and place. It's quite American to put everything with P's, so it became known as the 4 P's. Is what are we putting into the market? At what price do we put this into the market? How are we going to communicate to the market that this is available, and where can you get it? Which takes us to if you go to page 62, you see at the bottom of the page that says group discussion. So in your groups, we have the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, promotion, place. Just preceding that activity, there is a description of what they mean with the 4 P's. So add another P that you think, and 3 C's, without duplicating the 4 P's.
Does this also go into PMA?
No.
It's a good question, because question 5 is not numbered. Activity 4. No, this does not. This is just a group discussion. This is not for the PMA. The next activity, the next one will be for the PMA, and then I'll tell you which one is activity 5 tomorrow, because as far as I know there are 2 activities, and they're both not numbered. Yeah, it's on page 81 is activity 5, so that is, that's fine. I think it looks like it's been rectified. Okay, let's start here. What did you... Shall we start with a P?
Not in class.
Can we start with my P?
Okay, what have you got?
For P.
Yes.
Production process.
Production process. Why did you decide on production process?
Well, we thought that it would be important to use it as in the marketing mix.
Like how you said yesterday where for the Woolworths things, when they see their farms, then they know that's like quality.
Yes, and I actually thought you had it for another reason, that is to make sure that the processes are streamlined or geared to meet potential demand. But then production process can also contribute to the image of the product.
A lot of adverts will not even talk about the product, they'll talk about how their product is made. They'll talk about the back end.
Yes.
Like series.
Yes.
How fruit is grown in the valleys, blah blah blah. That type of thing.
Then what is product stand for then?
That's the product itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That if there's a production process, why do we have product?
That's the end result.
No, but production is
It is embedded in product. It's a process itself that delivers an
No. Product is identification of what do we put in the market.
Yes.
Production is how is that produced.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
I am so relieved.
No,
Okay,
there's no way that I cannot agree because of it is not right.
Okay. Any other Please.
Okay, I've got a few. Can I say a few or just one?
Well, just first one, then we'll hear if they have a different one, and then we can hear the rest. And do you have another one, or?
Think
No,
about
it's the same. It's the same.
Okay.
That's what she said.
Okay, one that we did have that I didn't mention
So you work together.
was
You work together with
Predict.
this group.
so you have to estimate and predict what the consumer market wants, so that you can serve. To
Okay, yes. So that would fall in with the production, as I interpreted, that you can have sufficient product, but not with theirs that says advertise how you make it to show it's made well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yours.
We have two, but we'll settle for this one. Planning.
Planning.
Yes.
Planning.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
You have no choice.
Of course, there has to be a plan in place. What else do you have?
We had people.
Yes.
We had prime time.
Mhm.
And the rest was sick.
Now, what is the ideal? We have got. Yeah, what is the ideal time? That is quite important. Yes, your timing.
Yeah.
Prime time. What is the prime time? I like that one. That's the first one.
Performance.
And
Okay, and then I think another one that might be important is the perception you want to create
yes.
around the product.
Just a question, this is 15 PMA, right? So, do we, if they ask to give us P's, do we just say the P, or do we have to elaborate as to why?
It will definitely be better if you can relate it especially to the workplace product that you. Want to put into the market or am involved with, yes.
The C's we had to create doesn't have to be with the P's should link to the P's.
To marketing.
No, but each P should have a C. Well, only.
No, it doesn't. No. It doesn't necessarily need to link. It must address an aspect of marketing. Okay, talking about the C's, can we start with you?
Credibility.
That's quite important. The credibility, that goes very closely with the perception that's created. It must be credible. But it are still two different things. Credibility credibility assures the perception.
Yeah, and also the product must be credible.
Yes.
Yeah, the perception.
Okay, let's go to you on. Let's go here, group 4. What C's do you have? 1 C.
One.
We have communication.
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 How you communicate to your client customers, how you introduce the product to them is vital. So
Doesn't that duplicate promotion?
No.
Who said no?
It enhances promotion.
Okay, how would you differ between communication and promotion?
Communication would be part of promotion. It cannot be the other way round.
On the other hand, communication
We can't
doesn't
talk-
enhance
We
promotion.
can't talk promotion without
Without
communication.
communication.
Intrinsically, communication is part of
Promotion.
promotion.
Promotion is the process of communicating. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Promotion can be more than just communication. Okay? You'll see.
Customization.
That's a nice one.
Okay.
She really busted me.
You got your bell.
That is quite important. Because we have to, and that falls in with quite it's the perception you create, it is the means, your communication, your promotion. It has to be customized to address that specific market that you want to talk to.
You can even address a market within that market.
Yes. That's really, you could be quite proud of that one. Was it from you?
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
And now another C from there, yes.
Channels.
Yes.
Can you address creativity
Quite important.
and cycle?
Yes. Is it cycle dependent?
But China is
For instance, why does it help to advertise costumes on the 1st of July?
Yes.
Swimming costumes, that is.
Yeah.
Yes.
the communication process China is there.
And that leads to like prime time as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We have two others.
Yes, please.
Oh, it links actually with customization to the consumer, the place, because I can't put up a white man or white woman's hair salon and sweat that won't even make money. So it's the consumer.
Target market.
Target market.
Consumer market, yes.
Culture.
Yes, that would.
Yeah.
Culture and the. Yeah, that actually covers the consumer, yes. That covers what you want to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we also said competitive. For the promotion. And
Yes.
advertising and
You competitive.
pricing.
We write these things down.
Competitor or competitiveness, but you have to be careful there. What I can't remember which brand it was, but it was a very upmarket clothing brand. And I don't know why. I think it was Cartier. Well, that's not, yeah. But with all these, well, these cheap Cartier watches you get, if it was them, that wasn't them.
Oh,
But it was,
so like, yeah, that's so cheap.
That's so
How
expensive.
cute. That's like I can know that it's like changed.
but they went into a much lower sector of the market. And I can't remember what it was. It was the absolute upmarket.
Isn't it Swatch?
No. But it was the same name, same brand, and they sort of entered into the production line market. And their bottom line totally nosedived. Because suddenly they lost a major percentage of their upmarket clients. And that's profitable. I mean, it was a little bit more work to produce one garment, but very profitable. And now, when they wanted to enter into the production line, they took away their profit line by creating an unnecessary bread and butter line. There was enough money. So we must be very careful before we start. That's again the competition in price. Be careful, especially if you in the image market.
Just say, stay away from the model what's in cost profit margin.
Yes, if you. That's why motor car manufacturers, they continuously have price increases. First there was just a Volkswagen Polo. Now there are a variety of Polos. Different classes of Polos. You always have to have something in the bottom line of the market, and the others grow, grow, grow until you reach market satisfaction or saturation. But
More consumers.
yeah, or you don't meet demand anymore. In other words, where I get to the point where instead of buying a Golf GTI, I can buy something more upmarket. That some of the people, that the consumer decides I'd rather go to the next level. But please don't do that with motor cars. Okay, so any more C's?
In our answers, if we give more than 3 C's, is it bad? Unless we just give 3.
That's what we need.
Is it? No. You're talking about the PM, but this.
Yeah.
No, you can put in. All you do is basically make work for yourself. The reason why this PMA looks like that, you won't have another PMA which includes marks for your class activities, because this was just to test the class participation on when marks are allocated for it. But so basically, if you show it in your PMA, if you discuss more C's, you create more work for yourself. So we just want to see it there that you. Yeah.
But does this need to be in the PMA?
No.
But if it's just not a discussion and not an activity.
No, not the group discussion. If it's mark activity 1 to 6,
Yeah.
that is shown.
Discussion.
Sorry, the.
It's just a group discussion. It's not an activity.
Then it's not.
No. It's just a group discussion that you see in the PMA. It's marked clearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 1 to 6.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
She-
No,
PMA. I wasn't sure.
no, you don't have to go in.
Sorry, Karen. I'm having a bit of a concern on this. You are saying we should be very cautious when coming to competitiveness. I don't know whether I got you well there. For me, I think it goes with branding. You know, it is always said first impression last. My understanding is that if you want to put up a business out there, you rather spend more on its branding. That I would say to a certain extent talks to competitiveness, because you are saying, notwithstanding the fact that there are competitors there, I will strive for survival. Notwithstanding the fact that I may get drivers there, I will strive for survival. That is basically my understanding of competitiveness. If you allow me to make an example, I may want to open a mortuary, and I'll say when opening a mortuary.
Over my dead body.
Having analyzed the cost implication, I'll say most of the cost layout will go to purchase of refrigerators, and I would say I better go out there and buy refrigerators, maybe at a go that will take about 100 bodies. The other one will say, but no man, I can still make money without buying those refrigerators, but renting out, renting refrigeration from other mortuaries. You see the situation?
Renting space.
Basically,
Or using the deep freeze at home.
no, deep freezers of other existing mortuaries.
Yeah.
For me, you start a business from a very compromised position, in that your survival as a business is entirely dependent on the relationship that you may be having with that particular.
Okay, but the same. I hear where you're going, Timber. But if you start a delivery business, do you buy 10 delivery vehicles, or do you first buy 2 and get their capacity full before you get the next one in?
No, you may forget about the quantities. Let me say we are taking refrigeration, purchase of refrigeration vis-a-vis renting,
Buying versus renting.
Exactly.
Well, okay. Sorry, no, I missed you there. All right, no, that would very much be a financial decision. It was firstly the capital outlay or the finance. What goes with the renting? If you rent and you have full maintenance, in other words, if you look at do a bit of research and go to some mortuary and say, right, what does maintenance on your fridges cost per year? Which can be quite a bit. You can also use a restaurant as an example. But not for bodies then. But so if you say I've got a fully maintained product, then, and of course the tax implication. So that will be purely more a financial decision on what is more. You see, the benefit of renting would be that you can maybe use something else in bodies, but with rental you can adjust to seasonal fluctuation. But you can expand your business if demand for space increases. Without committing yourself, the benefit of rental is that you can adjust it according to your requirements. So you don't have to buy ample space in the beginning. You can grow with rental according to your business requirements. But that is that competitive? I don't think it has much to do with competitive.
Can you imagine the byline of a mortuary?
Because to what are you going to compete?
Cops stay fresh until.
Or do I still miss you?
We're discussing part of this forward. For the sake of progress, let us stay there.
I think the concern is, here is risk. I don't know if I understand what he's saying. Is that you don't want to build your business depending, because he mentioned if your relations or your business relationship with that other mortuary does not go well, and maybe to a large extent your business or 50% depends on that space that you're getting from this other person, and then now you cannot use that space anymore. You're compromising your business. I don't know if
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that's what he meant. That
from
No,
a
that's not.
competitiveness perspective, because you spoke about branding and competitiveness. So I'm trying to understand that. Are you saying that you are the way that you will develop your competitiveness strategy must influence the type of branding strategies that you have to come up with in order to be able to sell or move the product that you want to move into the market? That the branding must create enough hype to be able to move the product that you want to move into the market in order that to be competitive.
My understanding is that when entering the market is actually hostile. You won't find customers out there awaiting you, and those customers have made relationships with existing, service providers. Basically, that is my point. And I'm saying, first impression lasts.
Yes.
You establish that particular company, they know that you are reliant for certain services to so and so, Why can't they remain remain with either those service providers or go to service providers that can provide, let me say, the full package you see the situation. While you are saying no, because you want to check whether the market is accommodative of you, you will develop and grow. I mean, with time. For me, I'm saying you go there, you establish the brand, and you know that having established that particular brand, having assured your clientele that you are actually competitive, they will come and you'll deliver the expected service, and definitely that clientele will remain with you forever. Basically, that is my take. That's how it's supposed to be.
I think my understanding, just a little contribution, the way that I understand Temba is the cost of competitive edge. You know, that, you know, at what level are you supposed to, you know, that all that is saying is you need to have that competitive edge.
Establish yourself
over the others. You know, because if you don't, you'll never be able to tap into the
Let's
market.
go back to, say, Raymond Ackerman. He started off with what, 2 shops? 4.
He was like,
And he built it into a global, national, well, global now, chain. But it took some time for him to get from 4 to 40. I agree with you, yes, that I am quite a sucker for that. If I get good service at a place, I don't easily fall for price, because I just don't want the hassle of having to go back. So if you establish your name, there is a certain clientele. You will always have your market segments. You'll definitely have people that are quite flexible, that are very price conscious, and they will try anything else for the sake of price, purely because it is cheaper and hope it works. But remember, the cost, what you're basically talking about, is a quality service. What's that? What is the cost of quality? So you must identify with the right market. What is the cost of quality is my cost of quality plus the cost of poor quality. What am I saying is my quality value is that amount that I pay extra to you, and the amount I pay extra, I must consider what will it cost me really. I just want to come past you because that sun is a bit in my eye when I look at you. Thanks. So, what I have to consider is, what is it going to cost me if I buy poorer quality and it fails? So now I have to get into my car, bring it in, have it fixed, not have the equipment for my use, the purpose for which I bought it, and wait for it to be repaired or be shown the door and say sorry, and whatever goes along with the poor quality. So the cost of inconvenience is difficult to calculate. But there again, you would address a certain market. Then your promotion would very much focus on established reliability. And that is not an impossible market to capture. It's actually quite a nice market to capture. But then you must be able to put the goods on the table. If something goes wrong, then you can take the necessary action. That's why some companies have a replacement policy. This is broken. Sorry, here's another one. In other words, why do they do that? Because otherwise they have to go into the expense to take that broken product, send it to the supplier. Supplier has to send it to the manufacturer. Manufacturer has to have somebody that can repair it. They have to pack it, send it back to the supplier, back to the retailer.
And that's cost.
Now, if you go to look at your manufacturing, the cost of your manufacturing components, you're going to be way past the manufacturing cost. And the other reason is, I stop your grief right there. And that's actually the better route to go. Because you already have somebody that is skeptic about the product. Get him using it again. If you have a second breakage, then it's not going well. But in that discomfort zone for the client as soon as possible. Does that answer your question? You hear me? He doesn't agree. And please, next time don't use a mortuary, because I was thinking all the time, but your customers can't complain. Okay. So yes, there's definitely, I think the same with the clothing brands. If you, I have to remember that brand's name, but if you suddenly cheapen the brand, or you don't deliver good service, what does Woolworth base themselves on? Quality. You don't actually ever have to take anything back. And so what you are, you pay more, but you know what you get. If you buy potatoes, you won't get glassy potatoes. And if I ever have to take potatoes back to Pick and Pay, by the time I get to it, I will have a potato land growing. So I throw them in the dustbin. Because I'm not, the inconvenience, the time costs me more than, but at Woolworth I pay a little bit more, but I know I get the right thing. So there is definitely a market for. Sorry, I thought you were.
No.
Okay. So environments and constraints are the revenue and costs. What is the revenue that I can generate with this product that I put into the market? And what are my costs? Renting a shop in Sandton City is definitely more expensive than renting a shop in Tembisa. Unless Richard Maponya builds a centre there. Workforce issues and staffing plans. It's not just do we have people available, do we have capable people available that can do the work? Strength of internal communication. What would internal communication have to do with marketing?
If your staff are happy, they're going to tell lots of people.
That's Richard Branson's approach. He says, if my staff are happy, my customers will be kept happy.
And the biggest marketing is word of mouth.
Oh yes, that's your best.
If you make sure that your staff knows everything and they're happy with the product, they're going to go out and obviously market it for you.
I mean, if you have to walk into a shop, if you want to go buy clothing and you walk into the shop and there all these people stand with these dour faces, is that going to enhance your shopping pleasure?
No.
Certainly not. But if it looks like people have fun working where they work, or they will not make fun of you, but enjoy their work, that changes the whole experience. Because then if they enjoy their work, they will be willing to work. So, and
Or they give them the clothes to wear so that they're the models.
she's still in the clothing shop. That can also be. Or you, but if you are willing to work, you'll have some interest in your work. I once walked into a building, and I asked the lady at reception, I said, what is the name of this building? I don't know, I just work here. I said, yo, this is what you call loyalty. But people must know how the organization functions. Because if I have a problem with a business, and believe you me, when I want to know something about getting a Nigerian visa, switchboard says no. I know it's my Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 o'clock. I just want to know, can I use my Euro passport or must I apply on my South African passport? Because I do not want to go through the schlep twice. The reason I want to consider my Euro passport is because it goes much faster. I'll put you through to visa inquiries. 47 telephone calls later. Still nothing. They just don't answer. It seems like they are, so eventually the switchboard says, you know, it seems like they are ignoring their phones today. But why can't switchboard just ask me the very basic question? Or get up and, I mean, if I walk into the, let's say Brandon works in an organization, I have a problem. When you have a problem you would like it solved, the last thing you want to hear is, I don't know. But if I can ask Brandon, he says, you know what, that is not my department at all, but what you need to do, this is the process and that's where you need to go. Thank you very much, I'm got direction, I'm going to, in the process of solving this problem. And that is very important, and that's also why the quadrant looks like it looks, because all the functions are lumped together. Because it's all one big function at the end of the day. There should not be something that is not in support of something else. If there is something that's completely standalone, then it should be somewhere else, if it should be in a company at all. But that's why why does a change driver then stand separate? It's because it may not always be applied. We may need to apply it whenever we require it to do so. And then why is environment on its own? Because it is beyond our control. But we have to understand what happens there. Okay, and then financial resources. What do we have available in the form of cash? What is our financial reach? In other words, what finance can we get? Richard Branson in an interview said recently, Virgin's reach is 12 billion pounds. Does that mean he has 12 billion pounds? No. He has access to 12 billion pounds. Okay, and then what is the strategic position of your company in the market? Where are we going to compete? Where are we not going to compete? In other words, in Timber's situation, if somebody suddenly comes into the market with a cheap product and goes price war, immediately you have to sit down and say, right, what am I going to do about this? Am I going to join the price war? Or am I going to draw attention to the quality of my service and keep it where it is because I am quite established? And one good example of a price war is Johnny has got a general dealer on the one side of the street and Jaime is on the other side of the street. And well, they have both got clothing shops. And Johnny advertises jeans for 100 Rand a pair. Jaime advertises for 90 Rand. Johnny brings his down to 80 Rand. Jaime brings his down to 70 Rand. Johnny goes to 60, Jaime goes to 50. And eventually, Jaime marks down to 30 Rand. Or Johnny is down to 30 Rand because Jaime is down at 40 already. And one day he decides he goes to cross the street and he says to Jaime, but Jaime, how can you? We pay more than 40 Rand for these jeans. Jaime says, but I don't stock them. So that's the danger of price war. Maybe somebody doesn't even have what they advertise. It is merely to attract feed. Which has now also been addressed in the Consumer Protection Act.
Is it not what Coke did to Pepsi Cola with the bottles? That you don't, I think you were buying something, but it was more like collecting bottles, Pepsi Cola bottles, and taking them to crush and make it so.
I don't know about that incident.
I think that was the time when Pepsi Cola had to actually disinvest in South Africa.
And then they did what?
It's like I'm not really sure. He was selling Coke, Pepsi Cola, at that stage for a certain price, lower than the cost of even the bottles. Yeah, not even, two, you could get two for a price of one, and then he bought them. He kept on, it's fine, buy, keep on buying, but don't return the bottles. So Pepsi Cola had a problem of actually refilling, had to undergo a cost of making, getting more bottles to actually fill. And they were collecting, Coca-Cola was collecting bottles from Pepsi Cola.
Oh, okay, so they took the sort of, the trade-ins.
Yes. Now, so they collected all the bottles, and these guys, they were flying. The sales were doing well, but now the production was messed up.
That's actually some very clever commercial terrorism, actually, because
Also, didn't Coca-Cola buy all the fridges to get rid of Pepsi?
Come again?
They bought all the fridges.
I heard something about that as well.
They bought all the fridges and then they said
Yeah,
all
the
Coca-Cola
fridges.
fridges. The companies that even made them, they bought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said you will only stock Coca-Cola in there. I know SAB normally did that with their beer wars.
But SA Breweries is also very aggressive with that. I know.
In Zambia.
Yes.
Where they approached them to buy them and they said no. Then they bought, I think they bought in Ndola. Or they had in the soccer and Ndola was holding out. And they just dropped all their prices on all their beer. And they started losing, and then 6 months later they approached them with them and they took.
Or what breweries did with a friend of mine, he's got quite a big bottle store. Or at least somebody that I knew. And this guy he kept quite a variety of beer. He had quite a lot of Mitchell's beer. This guy from Neisner. And he always placed his orders on Thursday for delivery on Friday. No. Wednesday for delivery on Thursday, so he's stocked up for the weekend. And he places his orders, and Thursday comes and goes. Order is not delivered. So he phones them, and they say, no, it's coming. Friday comes. And he gets to the afternoon, it's getting busy, stock's running out. And Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, he says, I'm really got a big problem now. I said, but you shouldn't have a problem, you've got Mitchell's beer in your fridge. Message is clear, isn't it?
Crystal.
Yeah, end of Mitchell's. So yes, that is, but that's why we have something like Porter's 5 forces. What's your supply? Hmm? Yes. What is your supplier power? And that is quite important.
Like I learned over the years with beer, you'll never see Carlsberg and SAB in the same country. They'll never go for the same country. That's why Kenya has Carlsberg, you won't find the SAB unless it's imported. But you won't find, they won't own a brewery in the same country.
Because they add each other.
Yeah, it's like, I know Heineken has one here, I think. And Guinness built one here now as well.
Where?
I think in KwaZulu. I'm not too sure, stand correction.
But you can imagine the size of SA breweries that they actually said to Amstel, well, all the years that they spent on establishing the product, they were prepared to just let go. And why did Amstel do it? They said, you're not making it according to license requirements. But I can actually not really stand SA brewery beer. There's a guy in Pretoria that makes Draymond's beer. You can't keep it for more than a month because it's fresh. And if you taste that and you taste it against SA brewery, it's quite a different. Let's go have some tea. Okay, then external constraint factors is the availability of raw material, skilled workforce with a focus on the word skilled, capital, global politics. We are more and more subjected to global influences, governmental regulations, legal issues, labor issues, nature and market volatility. So in terms of those points and taking them as guidelines, there's our last group discussion for today. Some typical external factors that you think of and how businesses reacted to them, as well as what you would have done differently. External, something like the Lonman issues now.
Well, that's going to have impact on my business already.
How would you have handled it? Especially now, I mean, this 2-day strike that they had now. That was illegal. It's purely an example.
The question is where do you start realizing the illegality part of the whole process? Because for me, the illegality, if there is any illegality, doesn't start with the strike. It started with somebody who thought that he's so powerful that from time to time when it suits him, he will change the rules of the game. The situation is as it stands, that if you are a majority, you are afforded the recognition status that goes with those fringe benefits. That would include your office space, blah, blah, so on and so forth. In this case, AMCU went to the extent of having a majority of about 70%.
70%, yes, and NUM is 30.
So it is so unfair for anyone to claim illegality when the workers, rights, fighting for their own collective rights.
Yes, but there are also, all right, if you say it's unfair, is it because the mine doesn't recognize, or is it because NUM doesn't want to Why must, it's because NUM doesn't vacate the office, isn't it?
No, that's not the issue.
I wasn't sure. I caught the middle of the talk about it yesterday on the radio, but
The issue is mine management is not taking out or is not implementing the collective agreement as it's supposed to be, because immediately they realize that NAM is no more a majority union. They are supposed to do what that is expected of them to do as management. They cannot come and claim that
but
NAM is refusing
I understand
to
that
vacate
doing
office.
has to take place from the 1st of June. NUM, that's what I understood. NUM has to be out by the end of the month. And then they hand over. No, that I'm asking you. That's what I heard. I'm saying what I heard. What I want to establish is it an issue between the unions or the mine?
For me, I think the net has been tracked for quite a long time. If not mistaken, what makes a union a majority union is 15 plus 1 or 51%. And they have long passed that, and it's not like they haven't brought the matter before the table of management, but it appears as though management is colluding.
The question is, should the union actually even have officers on the mine?
Basically, what is happening, this fight between these two unions, I think management is having a hand in that.
You see, that's what I'm asking. Do you think so or do you know so?
No, obviously, I'm not weak in there.
But that's my point. If it is an issue between two unions, why must the mine's productivity suffer?
No, but, Kara, with due respect, I'm saying it is incorrect to say to reduce the matter as a rivalry between two unions.
But that's what I'm asking you. I say, if it is, then I don't see why the mine must be involved. If the mine is at fault, I can understand that they say to the mine, listen, do it right now. My capitalistic view is that the union shouldn't even have an office on my premises. But by law, they must provide an office. Not so?
They should, yeah.
Yeah, so that is law, so that is not the issue. Who must manage the office? Is it also by law, must the minority union willingly withdraw? Who has to manage that withdrawal from the office?
No, all parties participating there are governed by the collective agreement.
Okay.
All of them are expected to observe that. In fact, management of that particular mine is, I would say, they are having an upper hand in ensuring implementation of that. I'm saying it will be incorrect, it will be so naive for anyone to in fact, to accept whatever response, let me say, from management saying, but this other union is refusing to vacate, the offices. They are having a duty to ensure that, for instance, whatever that may happen, you may easily get fired, and they'll say they are there to manage as management, isn't it? So why can't they simply ensure that this minority union vacates the office? Basically, that's the responsibility to ensure that, and they cannot expect to go and tell this particular union unless they are deliberately.
Well, that depends on what the collective agreement says. Because I really do not see why if it is my mine, why should I manage the union's affairs for them?
No, but you're not necessarily managing them. You've provided space, you're the owner of the space. You recognize and you work in relation with whatever union that has been presented to you, which is in majority. But if you as management would start to deal and isolate or make this other one that is of minor representation, make it a bigger, representative organ of the labor, then you are perpetrating the differences between the unions.
But if I now have given notice that they must be out by the end of this month,
take them out.
and well, it's not the end of the month yet, so they must be out by the end of the month,
No, no,
and then
but-
Amwu can move in.
It has long been discussed. It's now that in terms of now the current agreement, disagreement, the recommendations and all that, that we're looking at the forthcoming month. They were long supposed to have vacated. In terms of the in terms of the notification that 50 plus 1 majority is the office holder.
But when was the notification given? Before the strike?
Long before.
Long before.
No, the notification, the one that they say now be out to the end of this month.
Before the strike.
But then,
But
then I
also-
think it's an illegal
sorry,
strike.
But also the Labour Relations Act talks to especially in particular section 100 talks to issues like that.
Uh-huh.
Because the function of HR has its own function, and the union have they also have their own function. The function of HR within any company, it is to ensure that any union that has 50 plus 1, they are the benefits that accrue to them based on that majority, they get them. And you have a situation where now, I mean, it's long overdue, a situation where now AMCU can't, occupy the offices, brings a question on the table of as to whether the mine management and NUM, and this is now at a level higher than the shop stewards at the mine, as to whether is there collusion or not. That's a question that has to be answered. I think if you go back to the issues of Marikana, also, those tendencies are there.
Okay.
And so it's the AMCU guys cannot in any way force
No.
to get out of office. It's not their responsibility, it's the responsibility of the mine.
Oh, okay. So it involves the mine, then the strike makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it is interesting to know what's going to happen when, collective, the bargaining, commences. In that, I think that the issue is more than just a particular union vacating the office. It's about recognition of this union that is the majority. We are waiting with interest to see how are they going to approach the collective bargaining negotiations.
Okay, Neil, no, then it makes sense. Now, all I wanted to understand is, are they married in community or out of community of property? And then you know how to interpret. So if it is a mine, if it is the mine's responsibility, then. But that is a typical external threat. You got a supplier. What happened recently with supermarkets is there was something about the chicken that was supplied, that they said these chickens were just injected with water and some steroids. Yeah. And then now this comes out. That's
Injected with water before it's frozen, so it weighs more. So they work out the price according to the kilogram weight. So when you cook it, like for example bacon, cook bacon next time just in a frying pan, and it just goes, there's water, there's so much liquid that comes out to increase the volume of the rice.
That's now again the benefit of buying product at Woolworths. You don't pay for water. So look at something like that. Those are typical external factors that are beyond your control. Suddenly you hear the supplier has been selling water to you at a considerable rate. Media's on your back. What do you do? Okay, so let's discuss that in the groups for about 10 minutes, then we can wrap up and break a beeline before 4.
What did you say?
None of the fueling stations have petrol.
Okay, can we start? Is Stanley disagreeing again? All right, let's start with group 1. Give us one of your examples, whoever speaks.
Is there anyone else in the speaker? Must I speak? Okay, one of our external factors that we came up with in regard to legal issues was, for example, the Nike marketing campaign. So, two examples there. They advertised Oscar Pistorius as being a bullet. Indirectly, they would have killed his girlfriend. And the day of the Boston bombings, with the Boston Marathon, I was actually in New York on the day, and Nike came out with a marketing campaign where they said Boston blood spills because they were competing with another group of athletes. And there was a blood spill because there was a bomb that day.
Sure.
So all of these things were completely unpredictable, but unfortunately, as luck was not on their side, they had to just, what they did then is they just withdrew their marketing campaigns from those respective people, and they never did anything to target back. They never did anything to try and fix it. They just sort of went on the back end. They were quiet, and you never heard anything more. So the way we would have done it differently is we would have come up with something new, or we were just saying as well that possibly they could have sponsored something like abuse against women. That would have been a really valuable campaign, and it would have given them fantastic advertising. So, yeah, that's legal external factors.
Yeah, that is quite. You see, now, must they make a big thing about it? Okay, the Boston, but now Oscar Pistorius, for instance, he has not been found guilty. What can they say?
I think the challenge there lies in that even though we know what Oscar did, but there's a court process that has to that he has to go through, and that principle that you're talking about of innocent until proven guilty. For them to come up with a campaign to neutralize the situation, it might be too early for now because of those reasons. But
Well, they should maybe just have taken off the word bullet and made it the bandit. But the point is, he's not found guilty. Now, can Nike find him guilty?
No.
That's also dangerous. And do you now have, you sponsor athletes, but if they do something wrong, you hang them? But I definitely think with the Boston bombing, one would have expected a bit more reaction. But I would definitely have taken some decision and say, you know what, we're having a bit of a bad run.
Yeah.
Let's not use any violent terminology in advertising.
Yeah, they could have, that was their problem and their downfall. But what they could have also done is turned it into like a humoristic approach. They could have taken that. And by, for example, Oscar, they completely withdrew immediately. So in that, they're telling the public he is guilty. Whether there's the old concept, we don't support him. So, and that a company as big as them, the public follows. So they go, okay, now he's withdrawn from him. Ha, he killed him.
I'm sure they know something.
Yeah.
So, but it's a bit of a catch-22 situation where you sit. I mean, so actually, one can also now say, who's Nike to say Oscar is guilty?
Sure, but in their actions, they didn't need to say that.
No, their actions. Yeah. So it's your reaction. It can be very interesting. Yes.
Sorry, and Outsurance did the same thing that same day as well. They just launched the advert, and coincidentally, he killed his girlfriend. It was life's too short, can't stand on one leg, and they had that one leg advert. Did you guys see it? Then Outsurance, they actually came on TV apologizing and saying that on the news they said that this was not intentional.
I did see that. It was on a
and they withdrew the entire.
It was in a newspaper.
They
just below the article.
Yes, they withdrew the advertisement.
But I think even a statement like that, say, listen, we cannot comment on the case. It's sub judice.
Yeah.
But we would not. It's a sad story. We don't want to associate ourselves with the advertising, with this in our advertisements, and that's why we withdraw. He's not guilty according to us, but at the moment, in respect for the girlfriend that died, we stand back and say, all right, because there might be some connotations made that are unsavory. Then you sort of...
But Karen, again, what should be the role of our media? Newspapers, like media houses in general, in advertising the distasteful advertisements as well. That is my concern, because I'll suggest that immediately you want to place something on the newspaper, and that particular newspaper feels that, but it is unfair. Yeah, they should take a decision to say, but you will not advertise this, you know, because I think they are playing a crucial role in playing into the psyche and mindset of.
No, they do, but what did you want them to do? To withdraw the ad, or?
Not, they should not have accepted and played that particular advertisement.
No, I don't think you can hang that around the media's neck to decide, because now you can't dictate. Then the media says Oscar is guilty. So the media can't go and say, listen, you can, no, he shot his girlfriend, and we're not going to advertise that. You're going to lose a lot of advertisers. So then they do actually what we are now saying Nike did.
What she's saying is that there was an advert where
with the legs, yeah.
projected
Life's too short, stand on one leg or whatever.
Presented with one leg. And I'm saying that was a very distasteful advertisement that should not have been accepted, in fact.
No, I don't think you can prescribe. That is part of
That's
freedom of speech, and I'm sure something like that they would have said to Oscar, this is what the ad is.
Tell me, will you also, tell me that this is freedom of speech, where you see the Marikana massacre. A number of employees were killed there. Right in the very same week, the media houses, I think your press, they held something like a conference of some sort where Rhino was elected or nominated as a newsmaker of the year, while we are having people who were killed in Marikana. To me, it doesn't make sense. So basically, my point is...
The Rhino was awarded Newsmaker of the Year.
Something, yeah, exactly.
But now...
And in the same week, people have just been massacred. So I think really we underestimate the role played by media.
No. What are the requirements to be nominated Newsmaker of the Year? What are the requirements?
Drama.
No.
Good story, content.
No. The number of the number of times that the subject was come up. When was Mandela Newsmaker of the Year? When he was in the newspaper about every day. Then he gets the Newspaper of the Year award. I think at one stage maybe Hendrik Verwoerd also got it. And but the point is, what is the criteria to qualify for Newsmaker of the Year? It's not the dramatic part, it's not how dramatic it is how much newsworthiness it enjoys. Rhino poaching has enjoyed a lot of news.
More than Marikana.
Yes.
Oh yes. Now if you go check why they awarded it, it will be a subject.
To explain that, it was difficult for them to explain that. The reasons behind, because they were saying, key or important stories. Of course, the other one may have come from long way, but the impact cost accounts as well.
But luckily there was more media on Marikana because it's already done South Africa enough damage. So maybe it's good to stop the media and focus on the rhinos.
Rhinos are going to be
extinct. That media plays a pivotal role.
I never said that they don't play a pivotal role. What I do say, I don't think they always know how to play it. Okay, let's go to your.
Okay, so the company that we chose, what we chose, we chose many things actually. We're speaking about many things, and about investing in South Africa and other international companies that come and invest in our country. So, like ABSA and Barclays, the fact that it's slowly been taken over by a UK-based company, which is now taking that place in our country. So what we would have done differently is never sell our shares out too much, and try other ways in which we can get international resources to actually come and invest in our country. And we didn't get as far as saying exactly how yeah,
But not.
to invest in our country.
But the bottom line, I gather, where you're going is don't buy existing business, bring in new business.
Yeah.
Which is quite a good point. Group 3. Who speaks?
Which one is that?
Capital.
Okay, we came up with the one was terrorism, specifically in relation to September 11th, how it affected South Africa, and the other one was recession 2008.
Yes.
The September 11th, for instance, airlines were required afterwards to install bulletproof doors into the flight deck. Airlines specifically flying to the US. Obviously, South African Airways being one of them as our national carrier. And maybe if we were running a company or we were the airline, how we could have done it differently, maybe looking at, is it really viable to looking at the cost of installing those doors because we want to fly to the US? If it's not really viable, then maybe look at flying to another route where we could form alliances with another airline that can take those passengers to the US and vice versa when we're flying from the US to this side.
Was it that expensive to install the doors? This is a matter of interest. I agree with you. The America shouldn't be dictating to us what we should be scared of. I am not very fond of Americans.
I don't really know, but what I know was that the doors it wasn't just the doors that came with that. They also had to install cameras.
It can't be something that can just be kicked down, of course.
Yeah, it was obviously, it's a safety precaution.
Yeah.
So I think you could look at it two ways, that maybe it's not just terrorism flying to the US, it could happen anywhere. I mean, we had a couple of incidences within South Africa, just there was 2 incidents that were reported, not serious, but it can happen. It doesn't have to be you flying to the US for it to happen. It could happen even locally.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it was expensive, I don't know. But I mean, if you were to look at something like that, that could potentially, for an airline like SAA that has been making laws for the past, I don't know how many years, and if that's something that would really eat into your margins, then maybe you could look at it differently. And
No, I hear what you say, absolutely, yeah. But
so, yeah.
good point. Don't just follow and say
Yeah.
All right, group 4. Who speaks or has a speak?
I would like to say that before establishing any business, one must first scan the environment, because as we said, there are some factors that are predictable and some are not. I can recall one day I was watching an Oprah program, and there were these people who were suing the USA government for substations that were built in suburbs, and people could contract brain tumor and stuff like that. So if I can also compare that with what ESCOM is doing here, just if you go down with the Edenville Hospital, you'll see there is a substation somewhere there. So that is something that should be also, if they know about these consequences, they can also avoid that people can contract like brain tumor and maybe lives will be lost. So there are some factors that could be also avoided. But like now, ESCOM cannot do that because it will cost billions of friends to like demote the substation from where it is to another place. So it's a quite complex also situation.
Yeah, for cost convenience, it's a lot of strange things happen. If you in Napoli, in Italy, there's a mafia operation called the Camorra, and they specialize in dumping waste. Now, in Europe, rules are very, very strict on waste management, or legislation is very strict. And companies have to prove that they use accredited waste companies. And these mafias all have front waste companies fully accredited. And then at night the trucks start driving around. They reckon around Napoli there's about 10 million tons of illegal waste dumped.
Sure.
And they do it in various ways. They also load ships. And years ago I read a report about the condition of cargo ships. It's quite frightening. But now when they themselves decide this ship cannot go any longer, then they insure it fully and they load it full of cargo, which is most likely insured as valuable equipment, but it's all waste. And then
They sink it.
at some very deep rift, two ships collide. Both very well insured, both the same owners, and then they sink. And that's why they usually, as I say, they do it over very deep rift, and then it's too deep to go investigate. So they get the insurance, and there's other ways they make money. But now, let's say they find out your company is dumping its waste at one of these companies. The company that you dealt with, it conforms to everything you require. But your name gets linked to this company. They now found out that this illegal dumping is going on. This is a mafia front. And your company is listed in the newspaper as one of the customers that use this company. You had no intention of making use of that. It was purely, you checked all the requirements and they were right, and they came in with the best price and you used it. That's very much the same situation. And just as a matter of interest, what they also do, there's a lot of Chinese labor in Napoli. They sell funeral policies. And these funeral policies guarantee that the Chinese will be buried in Chinese soil. It's apparently quite important to the Chinese people. And they, so when these Chinese die, they're supposed to be repatriated. They become Timber's clients. They are repatriated to China. And then one day they were loading this container and one of the chains snapped and the door fell open. All that fell out with one of these containers they were loading on one of these waste ships. And out of this container fell frozen Chinese bodies. So what they basically did, they collected the insurance money, load the container with waste, and waste the Chinese onto the ship, sink it. Problem solved. No complaints from the customer. Okay, so, but I mean, if something like this comes out and your company is associated to the operation, it can be quite a song and dance act to address it. I think we're not going to go further now because we are on 1:15 already. What needs to be added to what you told us?
She says.
No, they disagree. All right, we'll pick it up in the discussions tomorrow. And drive home safely. See you tomorrow morning at 8:30. I hope sincerely that I'm not stuck in traffic again. Oh yes, you too. Drive safely.
Thanks, sir.